Welcome to Demystifying Divinity with Joanna and Jenny.
Hi, my name is Joanna. I channel messages from Spirit in order to help people remember who they are so they can embody their power.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I use intuitive astrology to help people remember their blueprints and soul contracts. And together, we're demystifying divinity, one conversation at a time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Demystifying Divinity with Joanna and Jenny, where we help people like you remember your essence, remember who you are, so that you can be a more empowered individual and live a much more fruitful and abundant life. All one conversation at a time. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Hey, Jenny.
Yay! Hello.
How are you?
How exciting is this?
Very excited. So, should we talk a little bit about how this all came about in a matter of a couple of weeks?
Beautiful.
Jen and I were having a conversation, and the idea of podcasts came up. And it was suggested, I believe Jenny suggested it. Hey, let's have a convo type conversations. Let's talk about all this stuff, all this spiritual stuff, but in a lighthearted way. And I was like, yes, right on board. So we didn't think about it too much. We thought about it a little bit, and then we thought, I think this is probably something that people crave, having, conversations about everyday life. And even though it's all meant to be quote unquote spiritual, one of the reasons why I believe you, Jenny, and I are doing this is to demystify the whole idea of spiritual. What is spiritual at the end of the day? Well, here's the thing, according to my awareness, and this is my perspective. There is nothing that is not spiritual. Boom. There it is. There it is. In other words, whether you call yourself spiritual, whether you believe in spiritual, whether you take it, like it, leave it, whatever you want to do with it, everything is a spiritual experience. Anything other than that is just programming. So our passions, and I'll talk about mine, you can talk about your, Jenny. One of the things my guide suggested was to talk about what is it that I really love about what I do? Because this is what I do every day. And by far the biggest thing that I love about what I do is seeing an individual eyes light up. When that moment comes in and the person goes, wow, I didn't know this about myself. And I get chills just by saying this. It's an aphrodisiac for me. It might sound weird, it might sound selfish, but this is what I love about what I do the most. What about you, Jenny? What do you like about what you do the most? What's your thing? What's your kick?
I love that. And you do, because I have had the pleasure and honor of having a reading by you. And it is that moment of like, oh yeah, it's like that eye-opening. It's that hair blowing back. And I do love getting that feedback from clients too. Don't get me wrong. But for me, I come from a professional counseling background. And so for years and years and years, I acted as a counselor, and how many hours of talk therapy with the same client, and it's the same story. And as you're in that process, you have such compassion for the client, but you're like, I know there's a breakthrough there for you. I know there is. And and as the counselor, you have to be professional and you have to do all the right things and say all the right things, and you can't break the boundaries and all that jazz. But with what I do with intuitive astrology is I can just say the damn thing. And then the person's like, oh, I don't know if I wanted to hear that, but they're like, yeah, I did want to hear that. It's kind of one of those moments that I love the most.
Wake up. Sober up.
And I love that myself. I always want feedback from friends, from family, even if it hurts. I want it.
Yeah.
How else am I going to get to the next level?
So as you're talking, and we obviously shared a similar passion, because we just, by the way, the way we connected was like, boom. The universe just basically popped me in your life, popped you in my life. It's like, okay, here's the person. It's like, it's a remembering. But anyway, so we do share this common passion. But as you're talking, my guides are saying, it would be worth discussing why is it so important in terms of what it is that we do. And I'm like, oh, that's a question that can take several hours to discuss. But at the end of the day, it's to help people remember who they are and where their power is. It's not over there. It's not in some God over there. It's inside. And when a person realizes that they have this power within, dare I say, the impossible happens in a good way. People become much more aware of who they are and where their power is. And when they have this awareness, they're able to wield their power in more conscious ways. So we are no longer walking asleep. We are much more awake. And when we are much more awake, we see things in so many different and beautiful ways. And we have the ability to make a profound change in the world. So according to what my team says, the reason why this work is so important, because we are here to ultimately have a human experience, but it's also to shift our consciousness. Yes. And you and I help people remember or become conscious of who they really are.
It's
right?
That remembrance.
Yeah. What is it for you? Why do you think it's so important what we do? And I believe it's important. I see it in clients.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not poo-pooing talk therapy, trust me.
Oh, no.
It's so important. And I loved being a counselor. If any of my past clients are watching me, you know that I loved the process. And there's something so important about telling your story. Absolutely. Like, not poo-pooing talk therapy at all. However, sometimes, just sometimes, it's that hit that people need. And I know that it really works for me when people call me out on my thing, or when I'm facing a trigger and I'm taking the observational look at the trigger going, oh, this is a trigger. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to work through that. For me, it's the talk therapy. It could go on for years and years and years. But the work that you and I are doing is a little bit more of a shock, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the right word, but it's more of a wake up, and it's a remembering, and these times are calling all of us to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's unearthing some things we have forgotten about for a very, 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 very long time. Right?
Yes.
And what's interesting, have you ever had a situation where you woke up but you didn't remember, you didn't know whether you were still in a dream or you were in real life? Have you ever had that experience?
All the time.
Apparently,
Moon in the 12th. Sorry.
no. Apparently, that's what waking up does. It makes us momentarily go, "What's real?" And that can be very shocking to the system.
Very jarring.
Right? It can be very jarring, which is important that, there's resources and sources that we can lean on, including myself, because I need those too. I'm still a human. You're still a human.
Yes.
But waking up, I'm not going to say that it's hard, even though, yes, it is hard, but waking up is probably, if not the biggest job we'll ever have.
Yes.
It's certainly one of the quote unquote biggest jobs, is to quote unquote know thyself.
Yes.
And in order to truly know ourselves, we have to go beyond the limited perceptions we hold about ourselves. And we have so many limited perceptions, most of it, 95% of it, underneath our conscious awareness.
Yes.
And when we begin to wake up and we begin to realize that there is so much more that we are unaware of, and that so much more is actually responsible for how we lead our lives, it's extraordinarily powerful. But it can be confusing at times because there is a moment of recalibration.
Yes.
Right? So we're both hoping that the conversations that you will hear between Jenny and I and some other guests who will come through is to make your path of remembering a little bit easier, a little bit more digestible. When we bring the idea of waking up into the real 3D concept where you can actually make sense of it, make it into almost like bite-sized pieces, right?
Real life examples.
Yes, it's real life struggles.
Yeah.
Something that the mind can easily understand because the ego wants to grasp things, right? So it's important sometimes for the ego to understand things in order to accept things. Sometimes we will not be able to understand because our human mind is too narrow. But for the most part, I believe that both Jenny and I are here to help people understand yourself in a much better way, in a bigger way. So speaking of bite-sized pieces, we thought it would be a good idea, since this podcast is called Demystifying Divinity. Well, let's talk about what the hell is this divinity? So I'll start with you, Jenny. According to you, what do you think? What do you believe divinity is?
Divinity is, to me, it's the spark that's within all of us. It's that spark. And so, speaking of triggers, like it's that God source within you. There's no more triggering word than God, right? So
Yep.
if it triggers you, I totally get it. I totally get it. So it's that spark in you. It's that spirit in you. It's that life force energy in you. You can say it a million ways. It's the spark. It's that spark in you.
I actually said to my team, I said, what's the big deal about divinity anyway? And this was their answer. Because that's all there is. There is nothing else.
Mic drop.
I just got chills.
Yeah. Thanks, Ed.
So I went on Google and looked up what, according to Google, is divinity. Here's what's interesting. In Christianity in particular, divinity belongs to God alone. And I'm like, no, that's not really what divinity is. Divinity, apparently, and this is what I know. It's not what I believe. It's what I know. It's what I instinctually know. Divinity is all there is. So if divinity is all there is, and there is nothing else, then that means that we must also be a part of that. Like, there's just no distinction. So divinity, according to what I know and my guides, divinity is not something that is external. Divinity simply is just because. So we are all divine just because. Now that's going to likely put some people's heads into spin, because there's this whole divinity. No, God, it's only God. No, let's talk about it. If divinity is all there is, and divinity is essentially what some call God, if God is all there is, then that must include us.
Yeah, it must.
Right.
It must be within all of us.
It cannot be any other way. There is no other way. There's no other thing. It's all divine. Yeah.
It's the D word. To me, it's the D word a little bit too, because it's like, it's way up there, right? So like, if you use the word worthy, like worthy is still a pretty big word, but it's below divinity in my humble opinion. So it's like, for the longest time, I didn't feel that I was worthy just because I am, but now I feel I am worthy just because I am. So do I feel divine just because I am? Ooh, that's a little bit harder.
It is. It
but
is.
the worthy is below divinity, yay or nay?
Yeah. It's very hard for, I would say, most people to accept that they are spark of the divine, because we have been taught in various different ways that we are separate than divine, right? But the separation is not because we are separate. The separation comes from the division within our minds. In our minds, we believe that we are not divine, so we don't feel that we are. So therefore, if we don't feel we're divine, we're not going to accept that. Right? Does that make sense what I'm saying? You said the word worthiness, and one of the things I wrote down when they were talking to me was I actually wrote, why is feeling enough such a big deal? You talked about worthiness. Why is worthiness such a big deal? And it has so many implications, right? So why do you believe that being enough is such a big deal? Okay, so we're enough. Now what?
And then what? Then you can really live the life you want to live? What?
Exactly, right?
Your dreams can come true? What?
What the hell? No, I'm not allowed. I'm not supposed to. I'm not worthy. That's not for me. This shouldn't happen. We talk about worthiness a lot, right?
Yes.
And yes. I certainly see that with clients pretty much 99% of the time. It's my own issue is worthiness as well. So I think like it's a plague, right?
I was raised in a religion where you go back and forth in the mass, in the ceremony, right? And one of the prayers you had to say out loud is, Lord, I'm not worthy to receive you, but
Mm-hmm.
receive me and I shall be
Yeah.
healed. Over and over again, I said that out loud as a child.
Mm-hmm. It's called programming. Yep, it's called programming.
You know, and that's hard. As an adult, I've since left that religion. But yeah, if you say that over and over and over, you're going to start to believe things like that, right?
It's programming. That's all it is. That's all it
And that's
is.
exactly how you started this podcast, is you said, divinity is all there is. Everything else is programming. And that is such a mic drop moment for me, hearing that from you, because it really is simple. All these things that we're going to talk about on this podcast sincerely are simple. It is a simple fix. It is a simple concept, but we muddy it up so much because of the programming. Is that a correct statement?
Totally. And not only that, most of that programming is unconscious, so we don't even know about it. Right? So we have to first dig out the unconscious programming, look at it, and go, oh, wait a second. This is my programming. If this is my programming, if I'm the boss of my programming, if I own my programming, well, that stands to reason that I can change it. Yes? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And
I'm
it's
the only one standing in my own way.
exactly. And you're so right. It is such a simple concept. In practicality, not so easy.
Yes.
Because we are so driven by the unconscious programming, which means it happens, almost like without our knowledge. Yeah. There was something else they were saying. Oh, as you were talking about this whole idea of being not enough, the question was posed: how can you be not enough of something you already are?
Yeah, it's like the oxymoron. Like, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I totally get that. The programming is pretty. It's pretty rough, though. It's pretty rough when you come down to planet Earth, and we're all facing that. And what's beautiful about now this time in history, is we get that now. We actually have scientific evidence of programming, and that it usually sizzles right in at about age 7. And we're running on those programs like for the rest of our adult lives, that what we received up until age 7. Science tells us this.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that we know it now, you know? Like, my parents' generation did not know this.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It is powerful to know this, and now we can have these simple conversations to talk about these simple things in life, so that we can decode it and we can demystify it.
Demystify it. That's the right word. One of the first being that God is somehow separate. I'm only using the idea of God because it's actually a triggering word for me. There's like,
yes.
And like you said, it's triggering for many people. But that's only because of my own programming, what God is and what God is not, right?
Yes.
Especially the whole idea of being born into sin. So you're pretty screwed up from the moment you're a baby. You haven't even done one thing and you're now screwed.
This is it.
How does that work? That doesn't make any sense.
Oh dear.
There was something else that was coming through. But anyway, go on. There was something I was getting.
But we were both raised Catholic. We've talked about this,
right? Yeah.
And, you know, like, it definitely did a number on me. I went to Catholic school. I wore the uniform. I got confirmed. I did all the things. So then fast forward in life, and I'm the only one in my family that left the religion. I refused to baptize my children, like all that stuff. And so there's consequences to be paid when you are the one in the family that doesn't do the thing. And so just demystifying all those lines of spirituality and religion has been like a lifelong journey for me. And so it's just like absolutely brilliant that, you know, here we are, we've decided to do this podcast. I think so many people need this, whether or not you were raised Catholic or religious or whatever, or if you're struggling to just come up with, what do I believe? You know,
right.
That's what we're here to actually talk about and demystify it, as well as take the dogma out of it. Like, I'm not here to say I'm right, they're wrong. It's just, it did not work for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're just to piggyback on what you were saying earlier. If you're happy with your religion, more power to you.
Yes.
Make sure that your religion doesn't limit you, Because if it disempowers you, if it limits you, if it keeps you fear-based, that form of religion is not one that's rooted in unconditional love, which what divinity is.
I was terrified of so many things when I was taught in my religion.
It's rooted in fear, and fear is predominantly ego-based. So it is religion based on some human concept of what God is. God cannot be explained to a human mind because human mind cannot grasp. Not only that, you cannot put a concept around the idea of God. The moment you put the concept around the idea of God is the moment you limit God, and God is unlimited.
Yes.
So we try our best trying to put edges and put in the box what God is, but we'll never be fully able to do that because just our minds are not designed to almost grasp it.
Yeah. I go in between spirit, source, energy, like the word God, like still the first thing that comes to my head is like a white guy in the clouds.
Yeah.
It's still so like I'll use the word God, but I'm still programmed.
100%. And it goes generations and generations and generations. Even though I conceptually know what is true, there is still this old programming that creates this jolting effect every time I hear the word God. It's like, oh, here it is. Here's the programming again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the whole idea of God being a man, I'll share with you an experience I had a few years ago, and I was sharing that with my husband the other day. So once in a while, I have conversations with consciousness. I still feel weird about it, but yeah, hey, it happens. I'm more open about it now. So it's like, okay, if you think it's weird, why would it be weird? God is within me. It's within you. You have access to it all the time. I just happen to believe that I can actually communicate with it. But anyway, there was one time where I had a conversation with God, and I actually said, hey, why is God a male? Here's the vision I got, because everything is given to me in a vision so so my mind can understand it. So I had a vision of a man sitting on a throne, which was depicting God, and there was this beautiful feminine being standing right next to him. And this is what God says to me. You see this beautiful being standing next to me? I said, yes. And he said, do you know why she's the most important thing that exists? And I said, no. And he says, because she's closest to God.
Wow.
Mic drop.
Felt that one.
But he showed up as a male because that's the construct I've been fed.
Yes.
So it has to take a certain form, because if it shows up as a female, I'm not going to compute that it's God because I'm not used to connecting God. So it's even though I know it, the programming is, as you say, still very much there.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And you hear that from people that have had near-death experiences.
Yes,
like
yes.
The angels. And then for people that stay long enough, they actually strip apart, oh, that angel was actually an ET or something else,
Yeah.
Or they see their, deceased grandma, but then grandma actually is an angel. So it's like, it just shows up how you can accept it.
Yeah, it's just so that we can make sense of it. There was one other time where Yeshua showed up. And the first time he showed up, I was getting ready to do a session, and I turn around and there he is. And I went like this right away. And he's like, no, 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 no. Don't put me on a pedestal. I'm just like you.
Yeah.
And I went,
That'd be hard to do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Sure, JC, whatever.
At that point, I was still connecting to him as Jesus. That name gives me the weebie-jeebie. It's just, again, programming religion. When I call him Yeshua, I feel much different because I don't have that association.
That's so
Jesus,
funny. I'm totally the same.
Yeah.
Yeshua really works for me.
Yeah.
But I can still use the word Jesus. And
So he showed up one other time when I was doing a workshop on higher consciousness, and he shows up, of course, dressed as he would be dressed, with the white robe and stuff, because that's how it was implanted to me that he looks. And all he said was, drop the religious dogma. So he was a religious figure showing up and saying, drop the religious dogma.
How about that?
And then him and I started to dance. And my message from that was, we are partners.
partners.
And I thought, wow. And then my perception of the whole idea of Jesus started to change.
Yeah.
Right. But again, all to do with my beliefs,
Yeah.
you know, and the whole idea of him saying, no, don't put me on a pedestal. I'm just like you. That was a hard one. Like I said, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God.
But
right?
the reality is that is true. Now, as far as his evolution, how aware his awareness was far beyond of the ordinary human being. But it doesn't mean, according to him, that it makes him somehow more or somehow we are less.
Yes.
He is just more, I wanted to say more evolved, but I want to say it's more of he remembered and we don't remember. That's the difference.
Yep.
What was the saying? I've never read a Bible, so that actually saved my butt because I don't have that conditioning. But what is it that he says? It's a famous saying, whatever I can do, you can do even better. That's essentially what he was saying. You're just like me. You're just like me. Just because you don't know it, just because you don't believe it, just because you feel that's not true, doesn't make it not so. Right? Boom. Again, belief systems.
Yes.
Right? So have you ever had any things like that happen to you where you're like...
So amazing. Yeah, I've shared with you before. I had a shared death experience when my dad died.
All
and I was the
right.
one that was in the room with him. And I was so blessed because he had ALS. And with ALS, you usually lose your voice at the beginning of the disease. But he had his voice up until the very, very, it was a whisper, but he had his voice up until the very, very end. So as he was dying on the bed, my ear was like up to him and he was whispering to me. And he said, I have to go now. I see my dad and my brother. So they predeceased.
Yeah.
Right? And I said, yes, go. And at that moment, I saw them in robes. They were monks.
Oof.
They were monks in brown robes. I like just standing there like you would as a monk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were really, really small. And I saw them down, and I saw them both waiting for him. And then I saw him like a light force go there. So again, was that really them?
Mm-hmm.
Or, like it was their essence, but that's the way that they showed up for me as monks.
Interesting.
So very interesting, right?
Especially because when you and I had that session, I showed up as a monk in a previous lifetime, and I actually saw a monk, and I actually saw. Well, we're probably all from the same soul family.
It's the same.
Or something.
Or something.
Or something. All right. So, what do we want everyone to remember today, Jenny?
Today.
What is our message today? What's our takeaway today?
Yeah, I mean, like, I could go into all my stories, and we will. We've got plenty of time on these future shows about the programming that I have had in my life. But I'm here to say to you, like, no matter how old you are, no matter how abused you've been, and this is not at all to not have any compassion for your story, but you do have the power. You are here. You can do it. You can observe the program and you can rewire the program. And I have so many that I am still working on, but it is possible. Even if you said it time into like that thing I said as a kid, I said it so I don't know, thousands of times because I had to go to church every Sunday. And then at my school, we would have services all the time. So saying that over as a child, I'm not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed. Like that's the only way to get healed is if I'm suddenly worthy one day. That definitely charred my soul as a child. Okay. So I'm telling you, no matter how many times you've said something, no matter how many times you did something, no matter what you did, you can rewire and you are worthy. So
100%. As you're talking, one of the things that I want people to take away is this. It's simply this. Knowing who you are is ultimately what sets you free. So it would be worthwhile asking yourself this question: who do I believe myself to be? And then be very honest in what you believe your truth is. Because if you believe that you are separate from God, your truth is one of separation, and you will live your experiences according to that view of separation. And when we live in separation of Source, that's when we ultimately live in pain. So if we want to experience less pain in our lives, and I'm not saying when you hit your hand won't hurt. It's supposed to hurt. It's supposed to tell you something is going on. But I'm talking internal pain, suffering. If we want less suffering in the world, we have to start looking within and remember who we are. And any projections that are based on limiting belief systems are just that, limiting belief systems. And you are not a belief system. You have a belief system. You're the boss of your belief system, which means you're in charge of your belief system. And the moment you realize what your belief system is the moment where you can change it, and is the moment where you let go of karma. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And it's beautifully said and well received. Thank you for that.
So thank you guys for being here. We would love to hear your comments. Any suggestions you have on the topics you'd like to hear. We're just like, wow, we can't wait to do this. And we will definitely put it on our list. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, my team. And we look forward to seeing you next time, guys. Take care. Remember, you're all divine, just because. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And please share this fab convo with someone who you love.